Francis and America. Tonight we are on the record with the first papal visit of Francis.
It's time to go on the record with WRAL News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm David Crabtree in Washington, D.C. As you watch this tonight, Pope Francis has already made his way to Philadelphia, where a major mass will be held tomorrow with as many as 2 million people expected. However, before he made his way to Philadelphia, he spent time in the nation's capital and New York. For the next half hour, we're going to talk about the impact this man has had not only on Catholicism in this country, but on this country as a whole. And we begin with his visit here in Washington. We begin with the first ever Mass by Pope Francis on American soil.
Pope Francis couldn't resist the opportunity of another joyous open-air ride in the Pope-mobile, as an adoring crowd of 25,000 welcomed him to Washington's Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception. As he walked through the basilica, the faithful who filled the aisles strained to see or even touch him, before he made his way to a small chapel where he prayed in private. Then, on the steps of the largest Catholic church in North America, at an elaborate temporary outdoor altar, the Pope celebrated Mass in Spanish, his native language. Unlike earlier speeches, he avoided controversial issues like immigration and religious freedom and focused on what it means to be a Catholic.
A todos.
Go out to tell the good news fearlessly, he said, without prejudice, without superiority, without condescension, to all those who have lost the joy of living. The crowd was full of young people. Many told us they've never felt so good about being Catholic and praised Pope Francis for his non-judgmental style.
Juniperum serra.
A highlight of the more than 2-hour ceremony was the Pope's elevation of Junipero Serra to sainthood. Serra was a missionary in the 1700s in what is now California. It's the first ever canonization Mass on U.S. soil. Francis quoted Serra's motto, "Keep moving forward."
Siempre adelante.
For him, the Pope said, this was the way to continue experiencing the joy of the gospel. So not only did the Pope speak in Spanish, but new Saint Junipero Serra was from Spain, and a large portion of this audience was from Hispanic parishes. In other words, this was a very big day for Hispanics in the Catholic Church. Chip Reed, CBS News, Washington.
The Pope's visit was, in fact, historic because of something that happened the day just before the papal Mass. A saint canonized for the first time in the United States.
Yeah, this is the first time that any pope has come to the United States in order to canonize someone.
That person is Junipero Serra. Father Jim Garneau is from the Diocese of Raleigh and a scholar of Catholic history, including history some find offensive.
Those finding it reprehensible that Indians might be gathered together into a place and in some ways kept there.
Serra brought Christianity to the unsettled West. In the 18th century, he established more than 20 missions in what's now known as California. 9 still remain.
Nobody was forced into the missions, but once they had chosen to be Christian, at that time it was felt important to keep custody of them so their understanding would increase and grow. And so you could come in to this, if you will, Hotel California, but you couldn't really check out.
Garneau hopes Serra's good deeds will be remembered by most far more than the controversial actions. And this priest believes this is a lesson for everyone.
But every saint is, of course, symbolically lifted up for imitation. But not everything that every saint does is to be imitated in our own time and in our own space.
Before coming to California, Francis met with roughly 300 bishops from the U.S. at St. Matthew's Cathedral. He took note of the clergy sex abuse scandal that has plagued the U.S., praising the bishops for a generous commitment to bring healing to the victims. The pontiff also acknowledged the bishops for acting without fear of self-criticism. Bishop Michael Burbidge of the Diocese of Raleigh in the pews at the cathedral. He tweeted several pictures, including one of Pope Francis walking into the church. Bishop Burbidge is among a select few who met with His Holiness one-on-one. He tweeted the picture later, along with a message, "I told Pope Francis all in Raleigh love him and are praying for him." None of this papal visit happened in a vacuum. It took months of preparation, particularly on the campus of Catholic University. Catholic University in Washington has been transformed. Fences to contain the faithful surround the campus. Inside, this giant altar is ready for a special mass. These seats are just the beginning. 10,000 more people will be standing and listening.
David, I am so excited.
You expect that from a bishop and his flock. Jewel and Wally Coco drove up from Cary.
It's nearer than Rome.
Also from Cary, an excited non-Catholic. Your dad's a Lutheran pastor. You're at Catholic University, and you're excited about the Pope. Sounds like the opening lines of a joke.
Yeah, I bet Martin Luther's rolling in his grave right now. Yeah.
Linka was forced out of her dorm room to make room. You're going to be kicked out of your dorm. Who will be in your dorm?
Secret Service.
All laughter aside, each of these people and all we have spoken with today have great expectations of a new bond forming from the papal mass.
Those who are Catholic are going to be very excited for this opportunity. I'm not Catholic and I'm very excited for this. There's others who do not believe that are excited for this. It's just going to be a bond that holds us all together.
Just a holy man speaking to all people, regardless of faith beliefs or anything else. You know, lead by example. And he's been doing a pretty good job of that.
After the Mass, Bishop Burbidge will have a few private moments with the Pope, and he's ready to deliver this message.
I'm just going to say, Holy Father, the bishop, the priests, the religious, the lay faithful in the church in the Diocese of Raleigh love you, and we assure you of our prayers and our support.
That's just some of what happened in Washington. Before he made it here, he was in Cuba. When we come back, we'll hear from WRAL's Leyla Santiago, who traveled with the Pope on that island nation.
Mr. Speaker, the Pope of the Holy See.
Rousing bipartisan applause for the first Pope ever to address a joint meeting of Congress. In his speech, he urged lawmakers to work together and help the powerless, namely immigrants and the poor.
The fight against poverty and hunger must be fought constantly and on many fronts.
The Pope did not shy away from controversial topics like climate change, calling on the U.S. to use its great innovation and leadership to avert disaster.
I'm convinced that we can make a difference. I'm sure.
After his speech, he passed a statue of Junipero Serra, the Spanish priest who he made a saint yesterday. Before leaving the Capitol building, he asked the estimated 50,000 faithful gathered outside to pray for the children, families, and himself.
I ask you, please, que me deseen cosas buenas, to send good wishes my way.
The Pope then saw firsthand some of the poor and homeless he spoke about. At nearby St. Patrick's Church, he blessed a lunch served to Catholic charity clients.
Y buen apetito.
And said a prayer for the poor.
We can find no social or moral justification, no justification whatsoever for lack of housing.
Hundreds were inside the U.S. Capitol when Pope Francis addressed the Congress. Thousands more were outside on the National Mall. Those inside in the House of Representatives had to have a special ticket. On the Mall, a ticket was not required. As the Pope was creating history inside the U.S. Capitol, thousands listened to history along the Mall.
I loved what I heard today. He's not me. How can we agree on everything? But I loved his speech to Congress.
Many of the people we spoke with on the Mall obviously liked what the Pope had to say, but didn't agree with everything he said. Their reaction, very similar to what we saw inside the House chamber. And what a picture of irony. Pope Francis threading the needle between Joe Biden and John Boehner, both devout Catholics and often polar opposites.
I cannot think of another time when I've been more proud to be a Catholic.
Representative Renee Elmers is a lifelong Catholic. She heard the Pope challenge Congress to work together for the common good.
We can work on issues together. Even though we may see things differently, there are still things that we all have in common, and there are things that we should all be working for.
Democrat David Price heard the same message.
And we certainly need to approach the challenges we face with a dose of humility, understanding that we can learn from each other.
Do you think his address today to Congress will make a difference with Congress?
I do believe it will.
Elmers told me her majority party has some work to do trying to listen to each other.
Bringing everyone together, resolving the issues that we have, and communicating. He's given me that sense of peace and hope that it can be done.
Price is also hopeful.
But moments like this really can help, I think, and I have high hopes for what might come from this.
And bases a large part of his hope on one particular moment of history made inside the Capitol today.
One thing that happened was that the Golden Rule was invoked and applauded on the House floor. A wonderful moment. This is a universal maxim of human responsibility.
Throughout this week, we have been at this live shot location, as we say in television, and over my shoulder is the Capitol Dome, shrouded in scaffolding. It's been that way for well over a year. The dome is clad with iron. It had begun to corrode. It had begun to leak. A major restoration process is underway. Sort of ugly, I think most people would say. Not the dome itself, but all the scaffolding. However, you've got to think, what a view there from the top. That's expected to be up at least another year. When it's down, as we saw with the Washington Monument earlier this year, I'm sure it will look spectacular. And one other note of reflection regarding the Pope. We have talked all week about how he loves to wade into crowds, talk with people, give blessings to people, kiss babies, comfort those who are afflicted. Earlier on Thursday, before he left town, he was doing just that. When a member of his security team walked over as if to say, "It's time for us to go." He took a breath, sort of exhaled, looked at his watch as if to say, "I'm not finished. And by the way, I'm the Pope. If I want to stay a few more minutes, it will be okay."
About 11 million people, and it seems like everyone is following this Pope's every move here on the island. This morning, a mass, then a meeting with President Raul Castro. In just a matter of hours, he will be meeting with the youth of the island, a series of events drawing huge crowds. In the same square used for political rallies over the last 50 years, the crowds have gathered yet again, this time for the first visit from a Latin American pope.
I just can't believe we got this close.
Among the thousands, Carrie Strickland of Raleigh, North Carolina.
He's going to come up this side.
Yet Pope Francis didn't even have to get to this side before his presence was felt by all.
That's very clear. Everybody wants a picture of when they were that close.
Close in this case.
Probably 20, 30 feet. I mean, he's right there.
And just when it felt like this is as close to Pope Francis the crowd could get.
Oh wow, he is getting out.
The pontiff reached out to children before he and everyone else made their way into Revolutionary Square for Mass. A Mass that united the people of Cuba with the rest of the world.
I think it's a hopeful time, a time that maybe we can share peace with the Cuban people, and it's beautiful.
The Pope expressed gratitude for improved diplomatic relations between Cuba and the United States, a product of his very own efforts.
Change in this moment, I believe in that. I believe in that.
After all, the Pope asked the people of Cuba to once again pray for him.
That makes me feel like he's someone who is humble and he's someone who is for God.
De paz y reconciliación.
And to follow the path of peace and reconciliation. The Pope also asked for prayers for those in prison at this time. You know, here in Cuba, it's actually less than 10% estimated to be practicing Catholics. But as I was there at Revolutionary Square at the time, you could clearly see, be it believers or not believers, everyone was there just waiting to hear what the Pope had to say. In Havana, I'm Leyla Santiago, WRAL News.
Thousands line New York City's Fifth Avenue to greet Pope Francis as he made his way to St. Patrick's Cathedral.
Papa Francesco, welcome to St. Patrick's Cathedral.
Francis confronted serious issues all day. He acknowledged the church's sex abuse scandal during his evening prayer service. You suffered greatly in the not-too-distant past by having to bear the shame of some of your brothers who harmed and scandalized the church in the most vulnerable of her members, he said.
Oh my God, if anything, this Pope is amazing, and I really believe that he truly works with God.
Francis blessed this young girl at the airport who is confined to a wheelchair. She said she believes in miracles.
It was the most precious moment of my life.
Every life is sacred.
Earlier, Francis urged lawmakers to abolish the death penalty during his historic address to Congress. He also touched on global warming and pleaded with Americans to welcome immigrants and refugees. After a speech to the powerful, Francis had lunch with the poor in downtown Washington. Then he blessed children as he departed for New York City.
Some people said that this Pope was treated like a rock star here in Washington, engaging by the money spent by people who wanted souvenirs. You might agree. Take a look at some of the items we found. A very long line under the hot sun. They walked, helped each other, parishioners and priests, all wanting to shop for a spiritual souvenir. And once inside, there are all sorts of things to buy. Back here were mugs, there are statues of the Pope, all sorts of things commemorating the canonization today, down to t-shirts, again, more mugs and books. As far as you can see, hundreds of people are waiting to come in and spend their money. As I heard once in the old city of Jerusalem, there's no business like God's business. Are you going to wear that today?
Yes, I can wear it today. Yeah.
T-shirts, stuffed animals, flags, books, charms, all of this creating Catholic currency. You're shopping?
Yes, we are shopping.
What are you shopping for?
Oh, pilgrims from Mexico.
Some of us would think, as a priest, you don't need any of this.
Oh, well, they told us, bring us something. And we are in obedience.
So you're buying lots of different things.
And yes, things for the kids who couldn't come with me.
You're reading as you're waiting. How long have you been in line?
Not very long this time. I waited for an hour to get through the security on the way in.
And what are you reading?
It's just a novel, Ballad of Lee Cotton. Just something fun.
The Pope wading into crowds of people has been one of his favorite and a favorite among the people here in Washington. And for one little boy, he created the memory and gift of a lifetime. That's right, he was able to be with the Pope in a selfie, something that the Pope seems to not mind at all with people, including many priests and religious along the way. As he has waded into crowds, he has stopped and talked with people, given blessings to people, and if they had the camera, he was willing to pose even for just a few seconds. I've been asked by several people after attending the papal mass this week and also one in Rome if there were any similarities outside of the liturgy. I think the basic similarity is the respect and reverence I saw at each of these masses. One was a funeral mass. It was for John Paul back in 2005. The other, of course, this week, the papal mass and the canonization of a saint. In both instances, one of the things that is so remarkable is that no matter how many thousands of people are there in attendance, they are there sitting there and participating in reverence, in quietness, with smiles, with peace. I was thinking about this earlier today. They weren't cutting up in church like I used to do as a little boy when my mother would reach over and flip my ear to make me behave. It's something to see a papal mass. There is no question that if you practice any form of religion, you would see the holiness in this man. And that leads to another point. He did something at the end of his time of speaking with members of Congress today that he also did on March 13th, 2013 in Rome. When he was introduced to the world after being elected Pope, he came out and one of the last things he did was say, "I will pray for you, but I ask you also to pray for me." And he bowed in silence for about 20 seconds. 200,000 people in St. Peter's Square and not a sound. The weight of the silence was palpable. When he finished with the members of Congress on the balcony overlooking the National Mall, he asked for prayers. And then he said, if you can't do that, in essence, if you're a person with no spirituality, if you're a person who chooses not to pray, would you at least send me some good wishes so I could do a better job of trying to help others? A remarkable sense, a remarkable lesson for all of humanity. We'll be right back.
I am most grateful for your invitation to address this joint session of Congress in the land of the free at the home of the brave.
This edition of On the Record has come to you from Catholic University in Washington, D.C. We're on site at the Basilica, the largest Catholic church in the United States. It's where the papal mass was held, the first ever by this pope on American soil. There were 25,000 ticketed folks who were here, another 10,000 or so on the campus, all thrilled to see this pope, and they'll be watching his mass in Philadelphia as well. And as always, we would like to hear from you. You can tweet us, email, or snail mail with your criticisms, suggestions, complaints, and compliments, should you have any. We thank you for joining us for this very special edition of On the Record, and we will see you again next Saturday night.